Yo, it's Gluke. Welcome back. Today, we're going behind the scenes on my Victory Lap remix. Let's go! Alrighty. Today is July 4th, which means that my Victory Lap remix just came out. So here we are, once again back in Ableton, and here it is. This is what it looks like. In this video, I'm going to go through how I made all of the sound design stuff and also some of the processing, but just sort of show you all behind the scenes what went into making this. So to start off with, let's just have a listen.
I need that blue white bitch on Depop, she a little teapot, 2 left feet, them Reeboks. Shawty did freelance, now she a free thot. Should've never let the bitch along with my seat moms. Got a bitch skip pit, popping in my Reeboks. Talk about a detox, pussy like a beatbox. All grown up, bitch looking like Salute, not that booty. I need that blue white bitch on Depop, she a little teapot, 2 left feet, them Reeboks. Shawty did freelance, now she a free thot. Should've never let the bitch along with my seat moms. Got a bitch skip pit, popping in my Reeboks. Talk about a detox, pussy like a beatbox. All grown up, bitch looking like Salute, not that booty. I need that blue white bitch on Depop, she a little teapot, 2 left feet, them Reeboks. Shawty did freelance, now she a free thot. Should've never let the bitch along with my seat moms. Got a bitch skip pit, popping in my Reeboks. Talk about a detox, pussy like a beatbox. All grown up, bitch looking like Salute.
Could've been 30, could've been a G. Should've never snitched, why you talking to police? Now they're looking at you funny when you're walking down the street, looking at you like food, trying to see where they can eat. Me, I'm like Wallow and Gilly with the game. You don't really wanna act silly, behave. When I were on stage and the milli gets made. I need that grease. I feel sorry for Skepta, they copy these flow, but they said that it's a new flow. Imitation don't flatter me, but it's cool though. Should've ever left the guy alone in my studio. Put them in the coffin, get them out of tombstone. Yeah, I got half of the price of a kudo. Living like a boss man, nothing like Hugo. I need that good price. When the plug turn pagan, tweaking, took an inflation. Pieces needed, getting impatient. Blood, everybody getting complacent. Leg, work, step on the pavement. Victory lap, I'm back in the station. I'm really a psycho, Patrick Bateman. If it's here with me, she's taken.
White bitch on Depop, she a little teapot, 2 left feet, them Reeboks. Shawty did freelance, now she a free thot. Should've never let the bitch along with my seat moms. Got a bitch skip pit, popping in my Reeboks. Talk about a detox, pussy like a beatbox. All grown up, bitch looking like Salute, not that booty. I need that blue white bitch on Depop, she a little teapot, 2 left feet, them Reeboks. Shawty did freelance, now she a free thot. Should've never let the bitch along with my seat moms. Got a bitch skip pit, popping in my Reeboks. Talk about a detox, pussy like a beatbox. All grown up, bitch looking like Salute, not that booty. I need that blue white bitch on Depop, she a little teapot, 2 left feet, them Reeboks. Shawty did freelance, now she a free thot. Should've never let the bitch along with my seat moms. Got a bitch skip pit, popping in my Reeboks. Talk about a detox, pussy like a beatbox. All grown up, bitch looking like Salute, not. I need that.
I smoke loud, but I never get lousy. Black Swan, Darren Aronofsky. Plug said he wants 16 for the pound, but I'm trying to get it under. Rack like Saudi. Iced out watch and my diamonds ain't cloudy. 4 rings never came with an Audi. Grills like Foreman. I put my money where my mouth is, another one to smile, just allow me. No new friends, I got mob ties. Where would I be without the guys who get fly? Argue 1,000 times, you tell jokes till the tears come out the eyes. You know the haters hate when you're out of sight. I hear them say we sold out. Yeah, we sold out. Everything except humble pie. One slice cut a man down to size. Like could've been 30, could've been a G. It could have been a G.
So that's how it sounds. Now let's start getting into it. There's really 2 main sections here that I'll break down, and that's going to be the verse and the drop. And so in the verse, our main goal was to support the Dochi vocal, because usually when I'm doing a remix like this, I'll listen to the vocal and that'll tell me a lot about the key signature and the rhythm that we're supposed to be going for here. So this is what that sounds like on its own.
White bitch on Depop, she a little teapot, 2 left feet, them Reeboks.
And so she's pretty much rapping and it's very atonal. I'm sure we could find a pitch, but it's not like obvious, like she's not singing. So what I did was I looked through the stems that Fred posted online. One of the stems had this sample in it. It was like a beep. And so the beep, I'm pretty sure, was D sharp. Yeah, so D sharp. So that told me our starting point for writing more of this melodic stuff is that it's all going to be centered around D sharp. So I made a little rhythm here out of the beeps. This is one of the reasons I use audio so much, is because with this reverb tail, I just cut it off here so we were able to have 2 different beeps going. So to reinforce more of the rhythms in this section, I made this pluck and it's just going on 8th notes. And I can't remember exactly what I started with, but what I was doing with this pluck is I kept taking EQs and then cutting it down on the highs and cutting it down on the lows and then adding more saturation and kept freezing and flattening it until we ended up with this. And then to help round it out, I added this layer. And I made this in Omnisphere. In terms of the notes on this layer, I went ahead and chose D sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and D sharp again. The reason I did that is because this one is a fifth below and this one is a fifth above. Neither of these notes are going to add a lot of color, but they are going to add new tones for us to listen to. And so with these three layers all together, we already have a pretty rich soundscape. I added this string layer so that way we were able to add tension to this soundscape. Because since this is more of a dry song, it's safe to assume that we can just go up a half step, and that's going to add a lot of tension. So this is what it sounds like with these 4 layers now. And then for one final piece, I liked how the soundscape was sounding. It was very stable with all of the sounds, but I added this big horn thing. I made it in Serum just by using the pitch bend and going down, and then put a bunch of reverb on it. And so this is what that sounds like all together. And the main focus of this section was finding sounds that all blended well together, so that way we could create a nice backdrop for the vocals to sit on.
Bitch on Depop, she a little teapot, 2 left feet, them Reebok. Shawty did freelance, now she a free thot. Should've never let the bitch alone with my seat, mine's got a bitch.
Now to add some more direction to this section here, I added this bass, and all it's doing is D sharp, E, and then F sharp. The way that it fits in the overall scene here is that it's giving direction to the overall piece here.
Little white bitch on Depop, she a little teapot, 2 left feet, them Reebok. Shawty did freelance, now she a free thot. Should've never let the bitch alone with my seat, mine's got a bitch, skip hip hop.
So I guess the role of the chords, if you will, is being played by the bass, and then the rest of this is just stuff for this sound to exist in. And so with the verse, the main priority here is to continue to add more elements that blend together until we get to the build. We can then take a bunch of stuff away, and that's going to tell the listener that something new is coming. So this is what that transition sounds like here. When we get into the build, I take out more of the harmonic layers, so like this one. So like these two I take out, so that way we have more room here. And then I leave this high tension pluck in. And I increased the pace of this beep here so that we know that something is about to happen. And it feels like we're getting faster and faster. And so when it comes to writing a verse like this, where you already have a vocal that's taking up a majority of, I guess, what you would consider the melody, the main goal is to make a nice soundscape and then add a bit of direction to it. So that way the vocal will sit over top and you'll get a nice polyrhythm as well as a really nice harmonic layer going. And that will also help give you elements to add back in when you're done with the drop so that we have somewhere to go back to. But you definitely want to figure out all of your key signatures and notes and stuff right up front. So that way you know the direction of the song and you know what notes to pick, and you can just focus more on sound design. So then to help build the dynamics, I did a bunch of risers and whooshes and stuff. I've already done a video on that, but this is how that all sounds together. And they're all pretty much just doing the same thing. They're all just going up. And so that's really all I have to talk about with the verse. In terms of picking notes in the verse, I mainly stuck with the tonic and the fifth, and that's because they're the two most harmonically similar notes to each other. And I didn't really want to introduce any more color than that into it, just because this is already a very dry vocal. And I didn't think that having an intense drop would mesh very well with having a super, super harmonic verse. But now to get to the drop, this is what the drop sounds like without the vocals. And so the main things in the drop is that when I made this bass, we have a column response here. There's this little like wickety walk part, and then there's like this 16th note roller that goes for the rest of it. And then on top of that, we also have a column response between the sustain basses, where this one's a bit more aggressive and higher pitched, and this one's a bit lower pitched. But in terms of sound design, the way that I made this layer is it's a combination of 3 sounds. And so this first one here, here's the original patch that I got it from. And so all I did here in this patch is I set this LFO to the sub level, as well as putting white noise through a bandpass filter. And that's how we sort of get the wick, wick, wick sound. By pairing it with the sub, it starts to turn more into like a musical instrument or some kind of noise, and it has some weight behind it. Then what I did is I turned it into audio, and so you can see here that there's just a little bit of white noise and a lot of sub on it. In terms of processing, it's pretty much just a saturator, but the main sauce of this layer is coming from the fact that it's cut up into audio, and I'm able to change the rhythms how I want without having to re-automate and build the patch again. So this is what this first one sounds like, and then this is what the second one sounds like. And all I did was just cut one of the stabs in half. I just left the attack off of it. But that way we're able to get more column response out of this. And then I've got this layer too, and it kind of just fit perfectly over one of these hits. And I got this out of what's called a mud pie, where you pretty much just make a bunch of fucked up audio and then you record it. So this is the one that I got it from. And then what I did was I took a cut out of that and then just layered it in with where this first synth is going. And then to follow up with this, I wanted a bass that led into the main bass. So I made this one. Pretty much all this is a bunch of FM on sine waves, and then I comb really hard through the filter. So I just turn the resonance up, and that's how you get the like air kind of sound, because the note on this isn't moving, it's just the harmonics. And then if we look at the other call here, this is the only other sound in this call group. And this one is the same as the other one, where we're just taking a sound and putting a filter movement on it and then cranking the resonance on that. In terms of processing, all I really do is slam everything into a limiter until it sounds good. I wish I could get more scientific than that, but I really can't. Then for the main basses, this is what this first one sounds like. And the way that I made this sound was I started in Serum, and if you've seen my Ultimate Serum bass tutorial, this will look very familiar, but we have our sub here, and then we have a top layer here with these two. And what I did was I detuned this one, since this one has a bit more grit in the waveform, and then I bandpassed it so that way it has this sort of like glowy effect, almost. And then in terms of effects, we just have a little bit of diode and a little bit of compressor. So what I did is I turned it into audio, and then I duplicated the audio so that way I could have another layer without any sub, and I just put a chorus with maximum settings on it to really spread it out in the stereo image. And this is what that layer sounds like. And so with them together, it creates a really full sound. And since all I did was duplicate it, it was really simple to put these together. And then the way that I made the second one is the same. I just changed up a couple of the oscillators. So here we have a major third with the same thing going on, where we've got the levels modulated by the LFO, a little bit of tube, a little bit of compressor. And then I did the same thing here where I flattened it to audio, and then I got rid of the sub on this second layer and did the same chorus trick. But that way it just adds a bit more width and it takes up more space when the rest of the song is playing. Then we've got our fuzz 808. This is pretty straightforward. It's pretty much just white noise with some sine waves. And then we have this sound, which is, I guess I could just make one really quick. In order to make a growl, what we're doing is we're having the filter move through the frequency spectrum. We want to make sure that we have waveforms with a lot of harmonics, so that way there's a lot for the filter to manipulate. So if I put this LFO on this cutoff here and I use one of these multi-filters, the H's tend to be the best, but really any of them that give you the sound that you're looking for is what you're supposed to do. You can hear that we start to get that vowel sound. And then if I do this to the frequency as well, we're already making some yoys here. So that's really the beef of this sound, is that filter movement. It really doesn't matter which waveforms you're using. As long as there's a lot of harmonics, then you're pretty much good to go. So this wouldn't really work well on a sine wave, but this would work well on a square. But that's pretty much how you make that growl. And then you can start doing other stuff with like FM and phase distortion and whatnot. But as long as you have that filter movement, you can pretty much just mess around with everything else. The only other sound in the drop is the bonk bass here. And I've made bonk basses countless times on this channel already, so I'm not really going to go into that. So the actual final sound that I haven't talked about yet is this big saw. And we've seen it once already in the verse here. And in the verse, I have the filter way down, so it's just more of a sub. But while it's playing in the drop, I take the filter all the way off. If you've seen my Chords 2.0 video, I had another layer playing a pedal tone. And then to make this sound is very straightforward. In Serum, you'll turn on another oscillator, and we're going to use this one as the sub, so we'll just pitch it down into the sub region. And then we can turn this one down a little bit, but the real sauce comes from the semitones, where if we add a major third here, we can start to blend that in, or we can add unison. And then obviously you can process it to get the exact sound that you're looking for, but that's really the root of how this sound was made. And so that's all of the sound design in the drop here. Now, in order to get the sub to do what I wanted it to, what I'll do is I'll crank these into a limiter, and then I'll turn the release all the way down. In order to get the sub to get really, really tight like this, what I'll do is I'll push it really hard into a limiter and then turn the release all the way down. And so that way, the limiter stops affecting the signal as soon as it goes back under the threshold. It allows for a lot more articulation in your low end when you do it that way. So if I were to use this as an example, here's the first sound, and I've got my limiter here. We've already got -5 of gain reduction, and if I begin to bring the release down, you'll hear that it starts to punch through a bit harder. And it's really subtle in the low, mid, and above ranges, but with the sub, it's really, really apparent when this is going on. And so that's just a little trick that I used on this track. And then in terms of bass processing, I really didn't do too much outside of what I already made in the serums. I do use the group buses a lot. So what that means is that everything that's grouped together is getting bussed together. So then we can put effects on the groups instead of having to route it this way. And we're able to sort of squash everything against itself. And so when it comes to the group bussing, I try to keep my groups as simple as possible. So here I've got my kick in its own group, and that's because the kick is unique and I just want to have more control over that. But then I have all of the drums in one group here, and I've got drum buses on each of them with different settings. And then I've also got all of the synths from the verse and stuff. And that's because these aren't really supposed to have much low end. So in order to get the clean vocals, I didn't really need to do much because the ones that Fred uploaded were very clean. And so I clipped everything against itself in the instrumental and then kept the vocals separate. So that way when I layered it in, the vocals were still very like crisp and clear.
Could have been a G. Should have never snitched. Why you talking to police? Now they're looking at you funny when you're walking down the street.
And then once I mastered the instrumental, I didn't really need to do much to the vocals other than add a little bit of sidechain. And then on my main master, I mastered it again. And so that way I was able to get the most amount of volume out of this without crushing the vocals and still getting a bit of a crunch on the instrumental. And so that's pretty much all I can explain about how I made this in terms of what I actually did and touched. In terms of the choices that I made, that's my own little secret that I get to know. But I'll go ahead and upload this project file to Patreon so that you can download it and pick through it there. Everything that you're hearing has been flattened to audio, but I will include the presets here so that you can see the presets in action before they're flattened to audio. And then with that, I hope that you have found this video interesting. Go ahead and check out my brand new Victory Lap remix. I'll leave a link to the Patreon project file as well as the remix down below. But for now, be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to hit the bell so you know when I post new videos, and we'll see ya in the next one.